My family spent years laughing at me, said I was lazy for working from home, useless, worthless, whispered it behind my back, laughed about it at the dinner table, all because I worked from home. They never stopped to think who was actually keeping the lights on, who was quietly covering the mortgage they all seemed to forget existed. This house wasn't theirs. It was mine. And when the eviction notice landed in their hands, their smug smiles collapsed faster than I ever could have imagined. It all started as a joke, like these things always do. A few careless words. A little dig about my fake job, how playing on the computer didn't really count as working. My brother Caleb nudged my father with an elbow, grinning wide. "Must be nice," he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "to wear pajamas all day and call it a career." The others chuckled, even my mother, twisting her cloth napkin in her lap like she was trying to wring out her discomfort. But no one stopped it. No one defended me. I sat there, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, heart pounding so hard it rattled my ribs. My cat, Daisy, brushed against my ankle under the table. The only soul in that room that didn't seem to think I was a walking punchline. I told myself to smile, to laugh it off. Like I always did, keep the peace, don't rock the boat. Instead, I just stared at my plate, the roast beef and mashed potatoes turning to ash in my mouth. "Audrey," my father said suddenly, his voice sharp with false concern, "maybe it's time you got a real job, something productive, contribute more around here." Around here. As if the mortgage payments they conveniently forgot about were magically covered by the work they mocked. As if the roof over their heads wasn't mine. My cheeks burned. My vision tunneled. I could hear my own breath, shallow and fast. "You know," my mother chimed in sweetly, patting my hand like I was a wayward child, "it might be good for you to spread your wings a little. Maybe think about moving out. Give yourself a fresh start." Fresh start. My brother snorted into his beer. Good luck affording anything decent with her little remote gigs. That was it. The final, deliberate twist of the knife. The blood rushed in my ears so loud it drowned out their next round of chuckles. I pushed back my chair slowly, deliberately. The legs scraped the hardwood with a shriek that sliced through their laughter. I didn't say a word, didn't trust myself to. Their faces registered the movement, finally noticing that something had shifted. But they said nothing as I walked out of the dining room, my steps steady, carrying all the dignity they had tried to strip from me. Upstairs, the walls seemed to close in tighter with every step. I moved fast, my body on autopilot, grabbing only what mattered: my laptop, the folder with my important documents, a change of clothes, and Daisy, who meowed sleepily as I scooped her up. The rest? Let it rot. My suitcase slid from under the bed with a dusty thunk. I packed in tight, angry motions, the zipper screaming as I forced it shut. They thought they could laugh at me, order me around, treat me like a burden in the very house I paid for. They had no idea. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I clutched Daisy close as I stepped to the window, staring out at the twilight sinking over the neighborhood. From here, the house looked serene. Warm light glowing from the kitchen windows, the faint smell of roast beef still drifting through the air, a picture of stability, of family. All lies. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, breathing slow and deep, willing myself not to cry. Not here. Not for them. Something inside me, something small, something feral, uncurled and sharpened its claws. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. No. I was going to win. Without a sound, I slung my bag over my shoulder, tucked Daisy into her carrier, and slipped down the back staircase, the one nobody used except the housekeeper. Past the dining room, their voices rose in a tide of laughter again, as if I'd already been dismissed, forgotten. Fine, let them laugh. It was the last time they'd ever laugh at me under this roof. As I pulled the door closed behind me, a single thought echoed in my mind, crisp and clear. This house is mine. And soon, it won't be theirs. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that made the air feel different, cleaner, like I'd just peeled off a skin I no longer needed. I moved through the darkened hallway of the house, my footsteps muffled by the thick rugs my mother had insisted on buying, Persian, hand-woven, very exclusive. She'd been proud of them, like they were proof we belonged to a class we could only pretend to occupy. Now, they felt as fake as everything else. I slipped into my home office and closed the door gently. This was my sanctuary. The one room in the house no one dared mock too loudly, probably because they never really understood what went on behind this door. In here, I wasn't their punchline. I was the architect of my own life, a life they'd benefited from without ever understanding. Daisy curled up in the corner, her amber eyes half-lidded, already sensing the shift in the air. The desk lamp cast a soft, golden circle across the surface of the desk. My laptop sat precisely where I'd left it, closed neatly atop a leather blotter. For a moment, I just stared at it, breathing in the silence. It was a different kind of silence now. Not the heavy, stifling quiet of swallowing my anger at the dinner table. No, this was the silence of decision. I pulled out the chair and sat down slowly, savoring the cool glide of leather against my arms. My fingers hovered over the laptop's lid for a heartbeat before flipping it open. The screen flared to life, bathing my face in a bluish glow. No social media tabs open. No email inbox screaming for attention. Just a blank, clean desktop. A canvas waiting for a single brushstroke. I clicked into my contacts, scrolled down. There it was. Ryan Whitaker, realtor. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Not since I'd casually asked for a market appraisal. Just in case. I smiled to myself. Funny how just in case moments turn into right now moments, when the world shoves you hard enough. I clicked the video call button without hesitation. The phone rang once, twice. I drummed my fingers lightly against the wood. On the third ring, Ryan answered. His face appeared, cheerful but professional. The same easy smile that had closed a dozen deals for my old clients. "Audrey," he said, leaning back in his chair. "It's been a while. What's up?" I smiled. Cool, composed. My voice didn't shake when I said it. "I want to sell my house," I said. Quietly, quickly. Ryan blinked, surprised, but he didn't ask questions. That's why I liked him. He understood the unspoken rules of discretion. "Got it," he said smoothly. "You want me to come by tomorrow?" "No." I shook my head. "I'll send you the specs tonight. I want a private listing. No big agency signs, no open houses. Discreet buyers only." His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Looking for cash offers then?" "Exactly," I said, my tone sharpening like a blade being honed. "Cash. No contingencies. I don't want to drag this out." Ryan nodded, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. "I'll get a draft together." "You still want to list under a private seller's name?" he asked. I smiled thinly. "Yes. Use my LLC. No trace back to me until closing." It felt thrilling, dangerous even, the way this was unfolding. And yet, underneath it all, it was peaceful. This wasn't rage anymore. This was surgical. "Understood," Ryan said, glancing up. "You're serious about this, Audrey." I met his gaze directly. "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." He nodded, and that was that. Business in motion. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under the slow, deliberate motion. Outside, the night had deepened. The house stood dark and still, unaware that its fate had just been sealed in a quiet conversation between two people who understood the art of silent revolutions. Daisy hopped up onto the desk, curling herself against my arm. I stroked her soft fur absently, my mind already moving 3 steps ahead. They thought I was small. They thought I was fragile. They thought they could shove me aside without consequences. Let them think it. By the time they realized what had happened, it would already be too late. The house was sleeping when I made my next move. Or at least, the people inside it were stuffed with roast beef and wine and smug satisfaction. I moved like a shadow through the hallway, my steps barely making a sound against the hardwood. Downstairs, the living room looked just as curated as always. Family portraits lining the mantel, my mother's crystal vase catching the moonlight, a throw blanket folded precisely over the back of the couch. It was also staged, like a set from a play none of us had truly starred in. I perched at the edge of the couch, careful not to disturb the order they'd built like a shrine to appearances, and balanced my laptop on my knees. The Wi-Fi signal pulsed strong. Another quiet thing I'd paid for that no one seemed to appreciate. With a few keystrokes, the browser opened. My fingers barely hesitated before typing. For sale by owner, private listing. No realtor logos. No agency signatures. No fanfare. I created a fresh listing profile under the name of my LLC Willowgate Holdings, a detail I'd established months ago, back when leaving had been nothing more than a daydream I nursed late at night. The listing page blinked up at me, empty and waiting. Address, filled. Photos, uploaded from the drive Ryan had prepped last spring. Angles that made even the worn banisters look charmingly vintage, not tired. Description: elegant, spacious 4-bedroom home in a quiet, desirable neighborhood. Move-in ready. Discreet inquiries only. Proof of funds required for private viewing. No hint of the truth: that behind those walls lived entitlement, scorn, and a family that laughed while they pulled the rug out from under me. I sat back, reading it over, feeling the adrenaline steady into a low, thrilling thrum. The last box blinked, waiting. Price. Ryan and I had agreed, competitive but enticing. High enough to attract serious buyers only. Low enough to spark a frenzy. I entered the figure, hit post, and watched the screen flash. Listing published. It was done. As simple as breathing. As irreversible as a blade sliding home. I closed the laptop slowly, my palms tingling. Above me, the ceiling creaked, someone shifting in bed, and for a fleeting second, a sharp, reckless thrill tore through me. They were up there, snoring, dreaming, believing tomorrow would be just another ordinary day. They had no idea their days here were already numbered. I leaned back against the couch, staring up at the ceiling, letting the moment expand around me like a held breath. Maybe it was petty. Maybe it was cold. But it felt good. Right. Daisy padded across the rug, jumping into my lap. She turned in a slow circle before curling into a warm, trusting ball. I ran my hand along her soft fur, my mind already racing ahead, imagining the emails that would start coming in by morning. The viewings I'd arrange without a whisper of warning. The sold sign that would go up when it was already too late for any of them to stop me. They wanted me to move out? Fine. I'd just take the whole house with me. Outside, a breeze rattled the porch swing, and the street lamp flickered like it knew a secret. The storm was coming, and I would be the one holding the reins. By midweek, the offers had started flooding in like a dam had cracked somewhere upstream. Cash offers, above asking price, private investors, relocation buyers, young couples, desperate to get a foothold in this neighborhood. All of them clawing for a slice of the life my family had mocked without realizing how precarious their perch really was. I moved through the house that morning like a ghost, my coffee mug warm in my hand, heart hammering a steady, secret rhythm in my chest. In the kitchen, my mother was already fussing with her beloved collection of teacups, humming under her breath, completely oblivious. My father sat at the table scrolling his phone, grunting occasionally at the news. My brother lounged by the fridge, swiping leftover pie with a smug grin. None of them noticed the way I lingered near the counter. None of them noticed the contract packet neatly tucked between a recipe book and the blender. It had arrived that morning, overnighted, signed, and certified. A full cash offer, no inspections, no contingencies, closing in less than 3 weeks. I turned the pages slowly, savoring each delicious line. Buyer, Brianna Sterling, an out-of-town real estate investor. Young, aggressive, decisive. Perfect. Ryan had done exactly what I asked. Private showings while they were at work, the realtors slipping in and out like whispers. No fanfare. No drama. Audrey, my mother chirped brightly, did you ever look into those new curtain fabrics I mentioned? I was thinking something lighter, maybe linen. Wouldn't that freshen up the place? I smiled sweetly, flipping to the signature page. Sure, Mom, I said, uncapping the pen with a quiet, satisfying click. I'll take care of it. The ballpoint skimmed across the page with the smooth glide of inevitability. Audrey Elise Stanton, signing away their home, right under their noses. The finality of it made something inside me hum, low and electric. I set the pen down carefully, pressing the contract flat, then slipped it back into the envelope and sealed it shut with a crisp swipe of my hand. Above the hum of the dishwasher and the clink of dishes, my brother's voice floated lazily across the room. "You know, if you really want to feel useful, Audrey," he said, popping a grape into his mouth, "you could handle repainting the guest room too. Make yourself useful now that you're working from home." The smugness in his voice twisted something dark and gleeful inside me. "I'll put it on my list," I said lightly. If only they knew. If only they could see how close they were to the edge, how they were standing on a rug I was about to yank out from under them. And still, they smiled like they were untouchable. I tucked the envelope into my satchel, slid it over my shoulder, and reached for my coffee cup. "Heading out," I called over my shoulder. My father waved a distracted hand. My mother murmured something about picking up milk. Not a single one of them looked up. Good. Let them stay blind. The door swung shut behind me with a soft, triumphant thud. As I stepped into the sharp morning air, a thought bloomed slow and wicked in my mind. It's almost too easy. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself grin. The backyard was buzzing with laughter that Saturday afternoon. The kind of easy, careless laughter that used to make my chest ache with longing to belong. Now, it sounded hollow, like the rattle of an empty can kicked down a dead-end street. I sat on the patio swing, a glass of lemonade sweating in my hand, pretending to listen as my mother and brother plotted a minor home makeover. "And once we change the curtains and maybe repaint the front door, it'll finally feel like our home," my mother was saying, clapping her hands together in excitement. Our home. I smiled into my drink. Caleb stretched out on the lawn chair, arms behind his head, sunglasses perched cockily on his nose. "We should redo the bathroom too," he said with a lazy grin. "You know, before Audrey drives away any future buyers with her little work cave upstairs." They all laughed again, like it was the cleverest joke they'd ever heard. I laughed too, right along with them, because why not? They didn't realize the joke wasn't just on me anymore. It was growing harder to contain the giddy hum under my ribs, the glee of a secret too big, too sweet to spill. The closing date was locked in. The inspections? Scheduled for the following week. Every box was ticked, every legal thread tied into a neat little bow. Daisy dozed at my feet, her tail twitching lazily in the sun. I reached down to scratch behind her ears, grounding myself. Stay calm, I thought. Stay invisible. The victory would be so much sweeter if I let them stay smug until the very last second. My father poked his head out from the kitchen. "Audrey, don't forget to pick up the paint samples after your errands, okay?" "Of course, Dad," I said, rising smoothly from the swing. I even winked at him, the good, obedient daughter, and earned a warm smile of approval. It almost made me laugh out loud. The following Tuesday afternoon was crisp, sunlit, and mercilessly ordinary. Exactly what I needed. I stood at the window of my home office, the same window that overlooked the side yard, and watched the inspection van pull discreetly into the driveway. The inspectors moved quickly, efficiently, with clipboard notes and murmured observations. Ryan had arranged everything perfectly. They'd show up during the narrow slice of time, when everyone else was out running errands, at work, or otherwise too distracted to notice strangers prowling around the property. I cracked the window an inch, catching snatches of their conversation. "Foundation solid," one said. "Roof's good for another 10-15 years," another replied. "Good. Better than good." Inside, I padded through the house on silent feet, heart hammering a steady beat of satisfaction. Every inspection point was sailing through without a hiccup. The house that my family treated like their birthright, like it had always been theirs by divine decree, was being quietly prepared for handover. And they didn't have the faintest clue. Later, when my mother called me in a panic because the living room smelled a little musty, I promised to air it out. When my father suggested hiring a contractor for the kitchen remodel he'd been dreaming about for years, I smiled and nodded. Let them plan. Let them dream. In a few more days, they'd have nothing left to decorate but the inside of a moving van. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass, smiling at my reflection. Calm, steady, unstoppable. You know that feeling right before a thunderstorm hits? That charged, aching stillness in the air when you know something's coming but you can't see it yet? That's what it felt like now. A gathering. A tightening. A power ready to break. They thought they were running the show. They had no idea the credits were about to roll, and they weren't even the stars of the story. The little coffee shop on 5th and Main wasn't anything special. Chipped tables, warm smells of cinnamon and old wood, but it was perfect. Neutral. Quiet. Unremarkable. The kind of place where deals were made that no one would ever suspect. I slid into a booth by the window, smoothing the front of my sweater and setting Daisy's carrier carefully beside me. She was curled up inside, purring faintly, unaware that today marked the beginning of the real endgame. The bell over the door jingled, and in they walked, Brianna Sterling and her partner, Evan, young, sharp. Exactly the type to snap up a deal like this without asking too many questions. Brianna spotted me immediately and smiled, confident and efficient. Evan gave me a polite nod, clutching a manila folder in one hand, like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Audrey," Brianna said brightly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Good to finally meet face to face." "Likewise," I said, offering my hand. Her grip was firm. A woman who understood exactly what she was buying and exactly how rare an opportunity it was. Evan pulled out the paperwork without ceremony. "Just wanted to run through a few final details before we close." "Of course," I said, sipping my coffee, letting the warmth steady the slight buzz of adrenaline under my skin. "We're ready to move as soon as the ink is dry," Brianna added. "Our movers are scheduled. Utilities lined up. We just need the keys." I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that felt like slipping on a perfectly tailored coat. "You'll have them," I said, immediately after closing. "No delays." Evan glanced at Brianna, and they exchanged a quick, satisfied look. "You're making this easy," she said, folding her hands on the table. "We appreciate that." If she only knew. Easy wasn't the word. This was surgical. This was precise. I pulled out a slim envelope and slid it across the table. "Final walkthrough instructions," I said lightly. "I'll leave a set of labeled keys at the title office for you. Garage, shed, gates, all included." Brianna opened it, scanned the note inside, and nodded approvingly. "Everything's lining up," she said. Yes, it was. Outside the window, the late afternoon sun was already starting to dip toward the horizon, bathing everything in soft golden light. The kind of light that made even endings look beautiful. We shook hands, sealing it quietly between us. No fanfare, no witnesses, just the knowledge that by this time next week, the house would no longer be mine, or theirs. It would belong to people who valued it enough to pay what it was worth. People who didn't laugh at the foundation they stood on. I rose from the booth, Daisy's carrier in hand, and turned toward the door. "You're going to love it there," I said over my shoulder. Brianna laughed, bright and easy. "We already do." The bell jingled again as I pushed open the door, the cool breeze of coming change brushing my cheeks. Walking back to my car, I didn't rush. I didn't have to. The final piece was in place. The fuse was lit. All that was left now was to sit back and watch it burn. The sky was a perfect, lying blue the morning everything shattered. I stood on the front porch, one hand wrapped around a mug of coffee, the other steady at my side. Daisy's carrier was tucked by my feet, packed and ready. My suitcase was already loaded into the trunk of my car, engine idling in the driveway. Inside the house, the familiar low hum of family life drifted through the open door, the clatter of breakfast plates, my brother's voice booming about something on the news, my mother asking someone to run to the store for eggs. Normal. Ordinary. Utterly unsuspecting. I sipped my coffee and watched the second hand of my watch tick toward 9 a.m. right on schedule. The screen door creaked as my father stepped outside, squinting into the sunlight. "You heading out early?" he asked, glancing at my bag with mild confusion. I smiled over the rim of my mug, savoring the moment. Something like that. Before he could ask anything else, a white moving van turned onto the street, its massive box frame gleaming in the morning sun. My father frowned, shielding his eyes. "What the hell?" Behind him, my mother appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Is someone moving in?" "No," I said, my voice light, almost musical. "Someone's moving out." They turned to stare at me, twin expressions of dawning unease. "What are you talking about?" my father barked, the first sharp edge of anger slicing into his voice. The moving van pulled into our driveway. Not the neighbors, not across the street. Ours. The driver hopped down, clipboard in hand, and started toward us. "Audrey," my mother said slowly, her face paling. "What's going on?" I set my coffee mug carefully on the porch railing, savoring the feel of all their attention finally landing on me where it belonged. "The house is sold," I said simply. "Closing finalized yesterday." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a fish gasping on dry land. "What the hell do you mean sold?" he exploded, stepping toward me. "You can't. You didn't. This is our home." I tilted my head slightly, studying him like a curious exhibit behind glass. "No," I said softly. "It's my home. It always was." The moving men reached the porch, smiling politely. "You folks ready for us to start loading?" one asked. I smiled brightly. "Give them a few minutes. They'll need to pack." My mother made a strangled sound, her face crumpling in horror. "Audrey, please," she whispered. This is crazy." "No," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the rising storm. "This is justice." Caleb stumbled out onto the porch, barefoot and bewildered, cradling a half-eaten Pop-Tart. "What's going on?" "The house is sold," I repeated, watching the words hit him like a physical blow. "You all need to vacate. Today." My brother's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "You can't do this. You'll regret this." I shrugged, utterly serene. "Doubt it." My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "You were tearing this family apart over a few mean comments? Over some jokes?" I laughed then, a short, sharp sound that echoed off the porch columns. "No," I said. "You tore this family apart a long time ago. I'm just handing you the eviction notice." The driver glanced at his clipboard again, pretending not to listen, but I caught the flicker of a smirk. He wasn't the first man to recognize a woman finally reclaiming her ground. Behind me, Daisy gave a soft, curious meow. I bent down, lifting her carrier in one hand, my bag in the other, and turned to walk down the porch steps. "You have until noon," I said over my shoulder. "The new owners arrive at 1. And without waiting for their screams, their sobs, or their empty threats, I walked calmly to my car, opened the door, and set Daisy carefully on the passenger seat. The engine purred to life as I pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a house that wasn't my burden anymore. In the rearview mirror, I watched them, frozen, shouting, flailing, and suddenly, very, very small, I couldn't have staged it better if I tried. The living room, usually so sterile and picture-perfect, was a chaotic mess of half-packed boxes, shouted accusations, and frantic pacing. I sat calmly on the armchair, legs crossed, a delicate porcelain teacup resting lightly in my hand. Daisy's carrier sat beside me on the floor, her golden eyes blinking slow and lazy, perfectly unbothered. Across from me, my father was pacing like a caged animal, red-faced and fuming. My mother sat crumpled on the couch, blotchy and sobbing into a wad of tissues. And Caleb was standing near the fireplace, fists clenched, like he thought he could somehow undo a legally binding contract with sheer willpower. "Audrey," my father barked, pointing an accusing finger at me. "You will explain yourself, right now." I took a slow, deliberate sip of tea, chamomile, perfectly calming. "Of course," I said sweetly, setting the cup down with a soft clink. I picked up the folder from the side table, flipping open the neatly printed contract. "I'd be delighted to explain." I adjusted my reading glasses purely for effect and began to read aloud in a steady, pleasant tone. Clause 14b. Owner, being the sole legal proprietor of the property located at 428 Willowbend Lane, retains full authority to sell, lease, or transfer ownership without consent from non-titled residents. My mother let out a broken wail. My father sputtered wordlessly. I flipped another page. Clause 22c. Vacate deadline. All prior residents must fully vacate the premises by 12 p.m. on the date of property transfer to avoid trespassing charges. Caleb cursed under his breath, pacing harder now. My father jabbed a shaking finger at the contract. "This is fraud. You lied to us. You tricked us. I looked up at him, my face the very picture of innocence. No lies, I said. Just omitted truths, which, legally speaking, are not the same thing. I flipped another page with exaggerated care, letting the rustle of paper fill the room like a drumroll. Clause 18A. Sale notification requirements were waived at seller's discretion under the operating terms of Willowgate Holdings, LLC. I smiled sweetly, which, as you know now, is owned solely by me. The air went thick with stunned silence. Caleb stormed across the room toward me, face flushed, hands balled into fists. You think you're so smart, don't you? He hissed. You think this makes you better than us. I tilted my head slightly, studying him. This man who had spent the last decade mocking me, using my success when it suited him, and ridiculing it when it didn't. No, I said, setting the contract down neatly on the table. It just makes me free. My father collapsed into the chair opposite me, head in his hands. You've destroyed this family, he muttered. I picked up my tea again, smiling over the rim of the cup. Families built on respect survive, I said gently. Families built on convenience? They fall apart the second the free ride ends. Outside, the rumble of the moving van's engine kicked up, vibrating the floorboards under my feet. Movers began carrying boxes and furniture out the front door, without a second glance back. The life they thought they owned, the one they'd taken for granted every day, was being packed up and hauled away, piece by piece. And all they could do was sit there and watch. I sipped my tea again, savoring the taste of quiet, undiluted victory. It wasn't rage that filled me now. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was something lighter, cleaner, like exhaling after holding my breath for too many years. I leaned back in my chair, the contract open on the table between us, the clock ticking steadily toward noon. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I wasn't the one scrambling to catch up. They were. The front door banged open so hard, it rattled on its hinges. Caleb burst out first, dragging a suitcase in one hand and a laundry basket full of random clothes in the other. His shirt was half-tucked, hair sticking up wildly. Behind him, my mother stumbled onto the porch, her arms full of heirloom china wrapped haphazardly in towels, face tear-streaked and frantic. My father barked orders from the threshold, red-faced and sweaty, trying to direct the chaos like a general already losing the war. The movers worked around them with ruthless efficiency, professionals who'd seen panic before and didn't care about the latest family meltdown happening in real time. They loaded boxes onto dollies, furniture onto ramps, as if it were any other Tuesday morning. Which, to them, it was. I stood near the driveway, Daisy's carrier tucked safely at my feet, arms folded loosely across my chest. From this angle, it was pure theater. Caleb dropped the laundry basket mid-lawn, cursing loudly as socks and shirts tumbled into the grass. My mother shrieked at one of the movers to be careful with the antique mirror. The mirror, she once told me, wasn't practical enough for my room. I bit back a smile. The new owner's moving van rolled up, gleaming and cheerful, pulling in right behind the chaos. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand, and gave me a friendly wave. "Morning, Miss Stanton," he called brightly. "Ready for the key handoff?" "Absolutely," I said, my voice cool and warm at once. "You're right on time." I bent down, unzipped the side of my tote, and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside were 2 keys, one for the front door, one for the back, both tied together with a blue ribbon. The ribbon was my little flourish, a gift-wrapped ending. My father stormed down the porch steps toward me, his shoes crunching over the gravel. "You listen to me, Audrey," he barked, jabbing a trembling finger toward my chest. "We're going to fight this. You have no idea what you've started." I smiled, small, serene, unbothered. "You can fight whoever you want," I said, handing the keys to the new owner. "But not me. I've already left." Caleb kicked at a cardboard box in the yard, sending a rogue toaster skidding across the driveway. The movers didn't blink. One of them carefully picked it up, dusted it off, and continued stacking items like it was just another shift on the clock. My mother collapsed onto the porch swing, rocking back and forth like it might somehow rewind time. The new owner stepped forward, A couple in their early 30s, wide-eyed with excitement, ready to claim their dream home. I smiled at them, genuinely this time. "Congratulations," I said warmly. "She's all yours now." They beamed at me, oblivious to the hurricane swirling just feet away. Perfect. Without another word, I gathered Daisy's carrier, slid into my car, and closed the door with a soft, satisfying click. The engine purred to life under my hands. The sunlight was thick and golden now, slanting low across the rooftops, turning everything, even the battered mailbox, even the crooked fence, into something beautiful in its own way. I eased the car into reverse, the tires crunching over the gravel. In the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of them, frozen on the lawn, surrounded by their own mess, still scrambling to believe what had just happened, still thinking they could somehow undo it. Daisy let out a soft meow, curling into the passenger seat like she knew, instinctively, that we were finally free. The road stretched ahead of us, long and open and lit by the fire of the setting sun. I didn't blast music. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even let out a whoop of triumph, though the urge tingled at the edges of my throat. I just drove, steady, calm, certain. Leaving behind the house, the history, the hollow laughter at dinner tables where I was never really invited to stay. Leaving behind their mockery, their entitlement, their grasping hands. They had laughed at me, dismissed me, used me, and when they tried to shove me out, I walked out first, with the title deed tucked safely in my pocket. As I merged onto the highway, the sun dipped lower, painting the whole world in a brilliant, burning orange. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. The road ahead gleamed, bright and endless and utterly mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't running away from anything. I was simply free. If this touched something inside you, if you've ever had to find your own way out of someone else's shadow, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away to finally find yourself? If you're ready to hear more stories of resilience, survival, and quiet triumph, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us. Your story matters too.